Hey, the Circle of Hope pastors are here. We're doing our Someone Asked video series. We have a whole channel with seemingly like hundreds of videos, it seems like we do this every other week. Question we want to answer today is, why don't we talk about spiritual warfare more?
Yeah, this came up in my cell last night where a couple of us were sharing how we've experienced real healing through someone praying with us using that language of spiritual warfare, like praying in the name of Jesus against like strongholds in our life. And so, or in the world. And so I was remembering the importance of our proverb under we're meant to go deep with God, that we're created to live in an environment where worship can be learned and spiritual disciplines gained and spiritual warfare fought. But are we teaching enough? Are we talking enough about how to fight?
What do you think?
I think we are talking about that, but we don't necessarily use that language. We don't always say this is spiritual warfare, but we're definitely teaching people to fight. And we share tools and resources all the time and disciplines that we practice in our life together.
Yeah, I think that we're organized in compassion teams a lot, and that might be the unsung spiritual warfare, and that I want to kind of complicate this a little bit. It's like spiritual warfare TM, that means something to people that have that kind of, vernacular. But like racism and poverty in the United States are spiritually entrenched strongholds.
Mm-hmm.
And so like we're definitely fighting those, right?
Yeah, one of the issues is that we have to make the spiritual warfare entirely otherworldly, and so it doesn't have material consequence in the world. So it's hard for people to move from this otherworldly metaphysical thing to a systemic expression of it. That's a challenging move because we don't think about spiritual things that way.
Because they are actually really connected.
That's right.
You're saying, right, Johnny?
Yeah. Julie, you want to say something?
No, Julie was saying something about how like when someone gets healed in prayer. Tell us about how that's spiritual and kind of more natural, physical, as if that were a separation. That's kind of the problem we're dealing with. Like that supernatural is spiritual warfare and natural is like what you do with your therapist.
Yeah, the divide isn't helpful because I think it's all in one. And like when we're praying in the name of Jesus with someone, I think that both we are calling on the power that raised Jesus from the dead is the power that's at work in us. So we are operating in that realm, but we're also in a very physical one too. There's new pathways being laid in our thought processes when we are sharing our struggle and being heard and known and
freed,
empowered and freed and seen for our struggle. Like, there's a real process happening on in both ways.
Yeah. The spiritual and it doesn't even work, like maybe that term spiritual warfare has just been co-opted by people that have done that divide too hard, and we're so about graying everything up and finding the place where it's both and all the time, that we're like a both and kind of people.
Totally. And even how we think about mental health has a spiritual factor to it. We think about things that are happening inside of us, things that are unseen, and we don't exclusively think of mental health issues and mental health care as a purely physiological symptom-based thing. There's something deeper happening than what we can see. And so but no one says that's spiritual warfare. So we talk about it all the time. I sound a little defensive, but it's around. We've adopted a new grammar for it because you really do need to come pre-prepared to receive certain specific theological jargon.
What do you mean pre-prepared? What does that mean?
You need to know what spiritual warfare is before you come, and then we need to assign it the same meaning so that you think I'm talking about it enough.
Yeah, and people have assigned the term spiritual warfare to like people that like whip swords around their head in a sanctuary and speak in tongues and stuff like that. Have you seen? I went to a church once where the pastor had a sword.
Yeah, that's quite an image.
Wow.
That may be why we don't use that language, at least to avoid making this separation, as if that's like spiritual warfare is happening somewhere else. And maybe
Totally.
that we don't use it enough. But I wonder if we should. I wonder if it does help to name the battles that we're fighting more explicitly.
And to claim that the power of the risen Christ is in us and at our disposal because of the work that Jesus has done. Like, miracles can happen.
So you're saying when we invariably talk about spiritual warfare, we should label it as such occasionally, or remind people that we're talking about it that way, so that they can put it into their understanding of how the world works.
Yeah, because it's so easy to think that it's just technique. That's because one of the spirits of the age is technique. And you just have to like get your thought process right and train your mind, and just be mindful. That's one of the techniques du jour. And it's beautiful and it's great, and there's definitely spiritual components to it, but there is more. Sometimes there's something going on that's way beyond you, and if you're just stuck in your own stuff, you're not, or even if you're just stuck in your own friends or your own self, sometimes you need more than that, and you need to get it into this bigger context, and that can be really helpful.
Totally.
And it's in our Proverbs,
So when we say, like Rachel was getting to there, the power of Jesus on the cross and his resurrection is the conquest of death. It's an assault against the powers of darkness. That is spiritual warfare. That's what we're talking about. That's the central idea that we're working with. Even on this Pentecost week, as we approach the dissension of the Spirit, we're engaged in that really spiritual work that has actual material consequences that we can see manifested in the sin around us. We're fighting that, and we want your help to do that.
And if you're a spiritual warfare TM kind of person, we probably need you. We need some of those bold proclaimers and prayers, because we need to do big things.
Yeah.
And we're not, even if it's not something that we talk about, it's not doesn't mean it's something that we're against.
So I hope that our summary of how we've spoken about spiritual warfare and how we want to keep talking about it and naming it when we do has been helpful to you in some way. So if it was, share it with someone else. That might add some new dialogue to this this fairly old topic that some people have been speaking about for a long time. Keep sending us questions. We want to answer them. We'll see you next time.